So I did it. I finally decided to play the one Ratchet & Clank game that I have never touched before, even though I actually have physically owned this game for more than 10 years now. Ratchet & Clank Full Frontal Assault was released back in 2012 alongside the HD trilogy to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the series, and oh boy, what a way to commemorate 10 years of Ratchet & Clank. This game is often cited to be the worst game out of the entire series, and there's a lot of Ratchet & Clank games here, but this is the bottom of the barrel, landing a 64 over on Metacritic, making it the lowest reviewed Ratchet & Clank game to date. And you'll find that most fans in the community will tell you not to bother with this, you'll have more fun banging two bricks together. So based on these two reasons, I've just never bothered to play Full Frontal Assault. Can we just talk about the name of this game, by the way? I know it's always been a thing that the odd Ratchet & Clank game, the naming convention is based on a sexual innuendo, like Ratchet & Clank Up Your Arsenal or Ratchet & Clank Size Matters. I mean, both of those are tee-hee, funny, haha, lol, but like, this one is just fucking strange. Like, Full Frontal Assault? What the hell do you mean by that, Bruce? This game was part of Insomniac's 2-year phase of experimenting with the series, as the year prior we saw the release of All for One, which more or less adapted the Ratchet & Clank formula into a co-op experience with up to 4 players. And that sounds cool as hell on paper, like that almost sounds like Ratchet Gladiator or Deadlocked #2. But it most certainly wasn't. Yeah, just like Full Frontal Assault, that game also wasn't that well received. While it wasn't as bad as Full Frontal Assault, it sort of sent Insomniac the message: just stick to what you know, just stick to what this series does best. And yet, here we are in 2025 with the latest Ratchet & Clank release being a mobile online arena shooter. How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man? Full Frontal Assault decided to mix it up again though, and this time it's a tower defense? Am I reading this right? It's a tower defense! Just like All for one of the core focuses of this game was multiplayer, but this time around with a competitive edge, and the idea to incorporate further replayability. This means that the game was developed with multiplayer in mind, more or less meaning that the game is a multiplayer title through and through, even though there is a single player experience here with a story tacked on. It's one of the most lackluster, malnourished, pockets are empty experiences that I think I've had from a PlayStation first party release. Now, I went into this knowing that this is the shortest Ratchet & Clank game out of the bunch. The Ratchet games aren't really long titles, they've always been shorter experiences, with most of the games lasting on average between 8 to 10 hours for one playthrough. But I'll tell ya, I was dick smacked when the credits started to roll at exactly 3 hours and 29 minutes playtime. The story mode of this game took me like the same amount of time it takes to finish Quest for Booty, which, like, Quest for Booty was originally supposed to be a DLC for Tools of Destruction, but for whatever reason just got a standalone release. But at least in Quest for Booty's case, Insomniac had the decency to slap a label right there on the box art saying, yeah, this motherfucker be tiny. Granted though, both of these games did come out at a relatively similar price tag, with Quest for Booty landing at $15 US when it released, and Full Frontal Assault landing at 20 US. But the entire time I was playing through this game, I was thinking to myself, this really feels like a scrapped mini-game mode that was maybe planned for Kraken Time or Tools of Destruction that just didn't make the cut, so they decided to repurpose it into its own thing. Because I do think that the concept of this game is actually kind of cool, it's just that it feels so half-baked. The concept here is that you're thrown into a large map with a base of your own that you can kit out with different defenses like turrets, mines, and barriers. These can be built on nodes using bolts that are acquired from defeating enemies or breaking boxes scattered around the map. The goal here is to capture the enemy's main power generator, but first, you'll need to activate 2 key nodes that are guarded by groups of enemies and a mini-boss. This means that you'll need to get some guns before taking these on. Unlike previous installments, you don't use bolts to purchase weapons. Rather, you can find them around the map within weapon pods that supply you with a choice of what weapon you want to pick out of 3. While exploring the map, every so often you'll be alerted that a dropship has arrived, which causes enemies to invade your base, with this handy indicator here letting you know which lane enemies are coming from. The base has 6 gen generators, and if these go kablammy, it's game over. So the gameplay loop here is to scout the map for weapons and bolts, return to your base every so often to purchase more defenses or to defend during an invasion, and capture the key nodes to eventually storm the enemy's base to win the game. The tower defense aspect here is sort of an afterthought though, as the core gameplay is still that traditional Ratchet & Clank run and gun formula. You're still switching between an arsenal of guns and leveling them up as you defeat bad guys, platforming around a map using gadgets like the swing shot or hover boots, rail grinding, or finding secret areas for gold bolts. Where your defenses will really matter is after capturing the main generator, you're sent back to your base to initiate a reboot sequence. This takes about 5 minutes, and it's primarily a horde mode with waves of enemies storming your base, so by this point, you'll want plenty of defenses set up. On average, a match or campaign mission takes about 30 minutes, though this can vary depending on if you're wanting every weapon pod or if you're exploring the map. And that's really as far as the game goes. The moment-to-moment gameplay though is definitely fun, though it does get repetitive quite quickly. It also doesn't help that there are only 5 maps throughout the story mode, with one of them being a reskin. These do take place on new planets, so that's a plus. These are Markazia, Ibaro, and Proteus 7, but given that the series has such a huge list of different locations, it's surprising that the map count is so low. Multiplayer has slightly different variations of the same maps, along with 2 extras, Torin 4, and the famous Kerwin Metropolis. Progression here is also really bare bones. You can level your guns up to a max of 5, which carries over from one story mission into another. Completing specific objectives in a mission rewards you with medal points, which levels up your Q-Force rank to acquire bonuses like faster hover boot speed and skins, and the skill point system returns to unlock cheats just like previous games, but really that's as far as it goes. The weapon lineup too is super disappointing, the absolute most boring lineup out of the entire series. There's 11 weapons total here, which means it only just beats out Into the Nexus and Quest for Booty in weapon count. You've got the Combustor, Warmonger, and Pyroblaster, along with some new stuff like the Cryo Shot or a new take on the Plasma Bomb Launcher and Thundersmack, but this lineup is so underwhelming. Considering that the core of this game is its multiplayer, this would have been a great opportunity for Insomniac to incorporate the largest weapon lineup to make each match fresh, rather than just equipping the same loadout every single time. They could have brought back a whole bunch of those classic weapons from the first 4 Ratchet & Clank games, along with just more new stuff and stuff from the future series. The Groovatron did make a return, so I'm happy about that. This of course means that we can stunlock the shit out of the final boss. The same goes for the defenses as well. There's like 4 mine types, 4 turret types, and I think 3 barrier types. Honestly, the best way to describe full Frontal Assault is simply just malnourished. I truly do think that Insomniac Games had a really solid concept here. The Ratchet & Clank formula actually works incredibly well in this multiplayer type setup where you have to defend your base, purchase defenses, walk around the map, collecting weapons and leveling them up. It's really fun. It's just there needed to be so much more. But it's almost like they packed it up halfway through development, thought, yep, this is enough content for the price tag, let's ship it. I think that if everything here had been doubled, so double the amount of maps, double the amount of weapons, double the amount of defenses, then this would have been a much more substantial package and ultimately less disappointing. Don't get me wrong, there are aspects of this game that I do like. In fact, it actually reminds me of a more fleshed out version of Ratchet & Clank 3's multiplayer mode, which is a good thing. Believe it or not, there is a story here, and yes, it is canon. It goes a little something like this. Quark is incredibly bored as there's no one in need of any help, when suddenly he receives a holo message from a masked villain explaining that the planetary defense centers in the Polaris galaxy have been disabled. So it's Quark's job to get the Q-Force back together, reactivate the defenses, and defeat this mysterious threat. Later on, it's revealed that the villain is actually Stuart Zergo, which I'll admit was kind of a cool addition. This is the Quark superfan from Ratchet & Clank 2, who over the years grew a great hatred for Quark because of Quark's misdeeds as a hero and the decline in quality of Quark merchandise. Like this is literally just the plot of Incredibles. Like, this man is actually Syndrome. For years, he had been devising a plan to ruin Quark by hacking his weather stations to throw planets into chaos and frame him. After 5 30-minute matches, you eventually confront him, and yeah, there's an actual boss fight, which I wasn't expecting. And the galaxy is saved yet again. It's definitely the weakest story in the franchise, but for such a small edition, I didn't actually mind it. I love how Insomniac incorporated a classic character and made a plot that actually makes sense given how pathetic Quark is most of the time. Also, even if this was short, quality still remained within the writing, full of the typical Ratchet and Clank humor you come to expect.
3. Whoa! Q-Force!
Yeah, we probably should have practiced that.
You spent taxpayer money turning a defense system into a weather device?
You know what this calls for?
Don't say it.
I'll tell you what this calls for.
He's gonna say it.
The Q-Force!
He said it.
Hail! Stuart Sergo? He used to be captain of the Captain Quark Cadet Club. You wrote some really disturbing fan fiction. How about one more delicious bit of deception?
Thank you for calling the Polaris Defense Force. If this is an emergency, or you've been invaded, please press the pound key. Please leave a message.
There's even this one moment where Zergo hacks the Starship Phoenix. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, the Starship Phoenix from Ratchet & Clank 3 makes a return and plays the infamous troll song on repeat, meaning that Sony literally licensed the troll song for a game of theirs. Yeah, remember folks, this is 2012. So to conclude, Full Frontal Assault is absolutely the worst Ratchet & Clank game, but it's not a terrible video game. It's just lacking in a lot of areas, and it makes me think that Insomniac were on a fixed time frame to develop this game, considering that only the year before they managed to get out All for One, and the year after Full Frontal Assault, they released yet another Ratchet game Into the Nexus. So from 2011 to 2013, it's clear that Insomniac were focusing more on quantity rather than quality. Around this time too, these guys were also working on Sunset Overdrive, which was an Xbox One exclusive that would be released in October of 2014. So yeah, these guys were full steam ahead, but because of that, it meant that some of their releases around this time kind of lacked. Thank you guys so much for tuning into today's video. Be sure to slippity slap that like button as it helps me out a ton, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Big thank you to my wonderful patrons and YouTube members. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and we'll talk again real soon.